brothers and sisters, all are welcome here at the Confessions podcast, whether saint or sinner.
Hello and welcome to your Confessions podcast from your friends at BBC Radio 2. Today, being recorded in front of a beautiful audience.
Do you like Simon's jacket? We've not talked about his wardrobe so far. It's a lovely jacket. Do you like his Cornish pasty shoes? As worn by Hugh Dennis, of course.
They've got a little compass in the heels, so when I get lost, I can tell where I am. So this is the Confessions podcast rather than a fashion podcast. And all our confessions this week have come from big, famous comedians.
They have indeed, yeah. We had Hugh Dennis, we had
Angela.
other people as well.
That's right, we had
and
Al Murray.
And it's been a really long week.
What has been one of the highlights of the show has been all our celebrity confessions. And here they come.
The Confessions podcast.
Al Murray, welcome to the stage, please. Is that Al?
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
A little bit of encouragement.
As a touring comic, life can be disjointed, and staying in touch with a normal home life can be pretty tricky. You try to take home comforts with you sometimes to soften the blow of being away, to ease the dislocation. Molly was a blue roan cocker spaniel that my kids had promised to walk but never did. Being away, I didn't see much of the dog, and it seemed as though taking her on tour would at least break up the monotony of life on the road. Molly, like many blue roan cocker spaniels, was not very bright. Friendly, loyal, permanently hungry, and really fit. Molly fitted into touring life pretty quickly. She and my tour manager were peas in a pod. They'd get a walk at service stations. Because she'd get a walk at service stations, I'd take her for a run before a show. Like I said, she broke up the monotony. She'd wag her undocked tail at everyone she met, shamelessly affectionately at stage doors everywhere in the United Kingdom. Differing theatres had different policies regarding animals, but Molly seemed so cheerfully, densely harmless. Who could complain? However, she didn't much like being left in dressing rooms to wait during the show. In Bury to St Edmunds, I was waiting in the wings to go on when I heard titters and a gasp from the crowd. "What is it?" I said to the stage manager, whose intercom had suddenly sprung into life. It was Molly. She was wandering around the stage looking for me. Or maybe something to eat. There she was on the stage monitor in black and white, blundering around. So, making sure she didn't escape became a priority. She'd be left in her dressing room with some water and half a jumbo snack. This seemed to satisfy, but as the tour progressed, so Molly's dissatisfaction with touring life grew. She was becoming jaded. I'd come back to my dressing room at the interval and hear her moaning her protest. That's right, it's a sad story. And eventually she made her feelings known in, how can we put it, more concrete form. I forget which theatre it was. I remember it was a theatre in Wales, which does narrow it down. And it was here that Molly, who'd been made to wait because I had guests at the show and we'd had a couple of pints of Guinness after the show, voiced her opinion on her treatment. In number one form and in number two. Two rather neat number twos and a lake-like number one. What to do? The two smaller items with toilet paper were dispatched in the dressing room loo. But the lake, what to do with Loch Pee? I had no means for cleaning it up. So, in a bid to cover up the mortifying embarrassment of Molly's dirty protest, I used what I had to hand. The pint of Guinness I'd brought back with me, I poured it all over the dressing room floor. Somehow convinced that the smell of booze mingled with urine would give a better impression to the theatre staff. You see, it wasn't just Molly who was loyal and really thick. What is it they say about dogs becoming like their owners? So I begged forgiveness from Molly for her understandable, though entirely grim, dirty protest, and for my inept cover-up that has left the staff at the Sherman Theatre in Cardiff, I reckon, might not be, with the indelible impression that I am an incontinent drunk.
Al Murray, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Should we ask the audience?
Well,
Let's do this, shall we?
Okay.
Okay. So I need a big yay if you forgive Al, and I need a boo if you don't forgive. So let's go with the forgive, first of all, from our audience here. Do you forgive Al Murray?
Do you not forgive Al Murray?
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh,
I've
it
had my
sounds
eye
to
on
me
you,
like
mate.
you're forgiven. This is from the audience here. Obviously, the listeners might have a different opinion.
They may well do. Bobby Pryor, what do you say?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because Al's sitting here looking at me with a big smile on his face. I don't know if I can forgive you, Al, because you should have taken the dog out. You should have. It's your responsibility to get the dog out. You blame the children, and look at you. So I'm going to be tough on you. You're not forgiven, Al Murray.
Okay. Matt,
Expect the Spanish Inquisition.
Matt Ford was clearly invited to stay because maybe you'd be more sympathetic.
I am sympathetic to it because I think it was done with the best of intentions. You really loved the dog. You couldn't bear to be away from it. And you spared the dog's blushes by trying to cover it up. You were thinking of the dog and not yourself. And I think I found it quite an oddly moving story.
Now you've put it like that, you're right.
And having met your tour manager, when you said there were two peas in the pod, I can imagine him doing that as well.
Do you forgive Joe? What do you?
Why? I can't believe you took the dog on tour with you. I mean, that's quite a commitment.
Well, yeah, but I was
Were you
really
lonely?
missing home, and
Okay.
she was very cheerful company and all that. I mean, but
Good
yeah,
cuddle.
I had to stop, obviously.
Al Murray, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.
The Confessions Podcast.
Mark Watson, who is the star of The Infinite Show, on until Monday at the 4th Pleasance Courtyard at 7 o'clock, and various other bits and pieces. But anyway, he's one of the hardest working men in Edinburgh, but he's taking time out now because over the years he has become burdened with a very, very bad thing. Isn't that so, Mark?
It's true. I would have said that everything that I'd ever done bad has already been turned into stand-up, but not this. This is something else. When I was 12 years old, and so in the second year of secondary school, I had a friend and rival called Tom. He was one of these kids who make everyone else in the class look a bit dim. He was the sort of student who knew the answer to everything and was eager to give the answer to everything. Whenever a question was asked, he put his hand up so far in the air, he was in danger of tipping off his chair. His particular forte was science subjects. While the rest of us were copying down sentences like, all movement requires energy, and staring blankly at them, he would be just tapping away on some amendments to the theory of relativity. He could also play the drums and various other musical instruments. He was good at sport. He was just one of those kids. It wouldn't entirely surprise me if he'd flown himself to school in a homemade helicopter or turned out to be able to talk to dogs in their own language. To make matters even worse, Tom was a really nice guy, so you couldn't even hate him for being so successful. At least I couldn't. In fact, we were good friends, and I used to sit next to him in class. I was the first one to see his test results come back with 10 out of 10 and a few ink smudges on the paper where his answer had been so good that it moved the teacher to tears. I would hang out at his house and see if his intelligence was a thing that I could somehow catch or steal, like he kept it all in a jar somewhere. I didn't begrudge Tom any of his success, but being his friend was a little bit like being the less pretty one in A Pair of Sisters. Then one freezing Tuesday afternoon, we were at games. Our games lessons took place on an exposed piece of land, so cheerless, so mercilessly lashed by the wind, that even the name of that area of Bristol still makes me shudder. You had to travel there on a bus, being taunted by the bigger boys, the ones who already somehow have moustaches, about the damage they were hoping to do to you when you got on the rugby pitch. And afterwards, you had to change back into your uniform in a dismal, icy pavilion, which had been built around the same time as Stonehenge. If you got changed too slowly, well, the bus would just go without you. You'd be stuck. You would probably die there. On this afternoon, I just could not get this mud-covered rugby boot off my foot. My hands were bright pink and it felt like 2 blocks of ice. The boot was just squirming around. I couldn't get a proper grip on it. The other kids were all nearly ready. They were teasing me. And since I couldn't remove the boot, I obviously couldn't get anywhere near addressing the problem of putting my trousers back on. So I was miserable, panicking. I heard the bus driver honk his horn outside. To the rescue came Tom. He grabbed the boot so hard the leg nearly came out of its socket. With no thought for how mucky his hands were getting, he yanked the boot off, helped me get the rest of my clothes on, and together the two of us legged it to the bus just before the permanently angry man called Derek drove it away and left us to fend for ourselves, just foraging for food for a week until games came round again. Now, only a few weeks after this, after another games lesson, Tom got beaten up. Gang of boys approached him with a view to kicking him very hard because in their view he was too intelligent and he needed to address the situation. Tom advanced a counter-argument which included a quote from Socrates, and that was the end of that. They knocked him over, took his school bag, kicked him over and over again. And I was there, but I did nothing. It wasn't that I didn't care. I was just scared. I was more feeble physically than him. I didn't know what to do. So I just watched him lying there with all these bullies menacing him, and I did not return the favour that he had done me so recently. Not that long ago, a couple of years ago, Tom and I got back in touch. He happened to be in Edinburgh, and we discussed the incident. And I realised during the conversation that he doesn't remember me being there. In his version of the story, I was already on the bus on my way back to school. So the whole time we were discussing it, I was like, I wish there was something I could have done, but it wasn't even there. So for all these years, and it must be about 25 years, he's thought that I was completely powerless, when actually I just bottled it. And so I want to confess to this quarter of a century of failure of friendship. As a postscript, as a result of that kicking, Tom started to bulk up a bit, got really good at rugby, of course he did, got into the school first team, ended up playing at Twickenham, and so I was jealous of him all over again.
All right, Mark Watson, round of applause, please, for his shocking tale of a betrayed friendship. That's very good. Joe, what do you say on the forgiveness front here?
Mark, did you have to think really hard when you were asked to do a confession? Were you like, oh God, there is something I could confess, but I really don't want to. But shall I? And did you beat yourself up and then ultimately we've made you do this?
Yes, that's a good summary, Joe.
Yeah.
Well, because the thing is, obviously, I could have lived for the rest of my life without Tom ever knowing this. This feels. I know he does listen to Radio 2 as well, so this is high wire stuff. But like when you've kept a secret for that long, you just. And I obviously assumed he knew all this time. It was only when we were talking about it and I realised he had a different mental version of the events. I thought I've been living a lie in his mind for a long time.
Well, I don't know whether to forgive you or not. I think because you've been very foolish and you've come on the radio and on national radio, I think I will forgive you because you obviously felt very, very bad indeed. So I'll forgive.
Okay.
Bobby, however,
Yeah, I'm conflicted on this as well because I know you, Mark, and you're a good human being. But I do wonder whether actually your friend knows, and what he's done is retold the story and protected you because he's a nicer person than you are. I think.
Savage.
I think so.
That's a game changer.
I think I understand the small boy in you that was terrified, so I'm going to forgive you, but not forgive you for saying, actually, you know what, I feel bad, I needed to own up to something. So you're forgiven and not forgiven.
Let's get an instant snap poll. If you forgive Mark, you cheer. If you don't forgive him, you boo, and you do it now.
oh, it's like jeering, isn't it?
It's
like going back to the
basically
Roman
what being a
times.
stand-up is always like. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not too much of a lynch mob. I think you're basically going to get away with it. Does Tom have your phone number?
Yeah, he does. So we'll know in only a few minutes whether he heard this or
Do
not.
keep us updated. Do tell.
Meantime, Mark, thank you very much indeed. The Infinite Show is on at the 4th Pleasance Courtyard. Mark Watson, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
The Confessions Podcast.
Okay, so it's 40 minutes to 6 o'clock, and this is very good, and it's confession time. And so Hugh is here because the Now Show is Friday night at 6:30 on Radio 4. Nobody listens to Radio 4 at 6:30 because they're all listening to Radio 2, but they can catch up later. Apparently, that's...
Yeah, no, you can. Yeah, you can catch up with your show later.
Anyway, Hugh, it has been brought to our attention, and you've been invited on because there is something that you wish to confess to.
Oh, what a confession. Okay.
That's the
I
name of
found
the
it very
feature.
difficult because I've had a largely blameless life, but I have searched back and thought quite hard about this. And this is really this is the 12-year-old me, and this is 1974, a thing that I've never told my parents. I don't think they're going to mind, but anyway. So 1974 was a different era, wasn't it? It was a time of terrible haircuts and terrible clothes, and it was also a time of austerity. And my family didn't have an enormous amount of money. So it was also a world where you had to make things last. So you had to make clothes last, and you mended things, and you didn't spend your time as a parent going to the post office, sending clothes backwards and forwards that your daughter had bought or sold, and then never being paid back for the postage. That didn't That just didn't happen. And this time of austerity, kind of manifested itself in many ways. So on one occasion, my mother decided my jeans were too short, or I decided my jeans were too short. So she decided to extend my jeans. And you would normally put an extra bit of material, perfectly all right, at the bottom of the leg of your trousers, wouldn't you? My mother didn't do that. She read Family Circle magazine, which, as we know, is what all the young people read. And she decided the best thing to do was to insert a small bit of ribbon in the middle of my thigh. It was the same colour ribbon, but she spent days making these trousers. Like, I could never wear them. I always felt terribly guilty about them. It was also Christmas, this is all for context, where I was desperate to have this game called Battling Tops. It was advertised on the telly, and you fired a spinning top into the middle of a garishly coloured bowl, and the last spinning top to fall won, and all that kind of stuff. And I sort of knew in my mind I was never going to get this thing because it was too expensive. And I was aware that in the shed, my dad was sawing and drilling. Something was happening. And on Christmas Day, he presented me, not with Battling Tops, but with a shove halfpenny board, which is... It's the most boring of all pub games. It is a game that it doesn't even appeal to people who are, more boring and even older than I am. It's not a thing for a 12-year-old boy for Christmas. I always felt very guilty because I was never able to disguise the disappointment that I felt. But this is all for context. The actual story is this: it's about shoes. Because there was a thing that, you couldn't get new things until the old things had worn out, right? And my 12-year-old self said to my mum, please, can I have a pair of these shoes called Nature Trek from Clark's? Oh, yes. Right? Which were they were like a Cornish pasty. They were known as the Cornish pasty, colloquially. And I managed to sell these to my mother. She would buy them for me because they had a sole that never wore out. And I thought, this is fine because my feet are growing. I'm going to grow out of these shoes within a year, right? I stopped growing. I had 8.5, my shoes. What? Yeah.
You're an 8.5?
I know, 8.5. They stopped growing when I was 12 years old.
I'm nearly that.
Yeah. You're 8.5. That's amazing. Anyway, they just wouldn't. I stopped growing. So I had these shoes for a year. I thought, surely the soles are going to wear out. No. 2 years? No. Into their third year, you cannot wear shoes for 3 years without getting new shoes. And I thought, they're not going to wear out. I'm going to have to wear them out somehow. But I cannot tell my parents. So what I did was I got a baking tray. I turned the oven up to 200 degrees and I put the shoes in the oven. And it sort of worked. It vaguely melted the shoes, but not enough. So I then took the shoes out, let them cool down, took them out to the same shed my dad had made the shove halfpenny board in, and I attacked them with my dad's Black & Decker drill. And I then, at the end of that day, I presented them to my mum and I said, I've no idea how this has happened.
Can I please have new shoes?
Can I have new shoes? And she bought me new shoes. And that is my confession.
And they knew nothing about that until
I don't think they know about that.
Okay.
And they won't know about it even now, because frankly, they don't listen to this programme.
Are they...
I'll tell you what they listen to. They listen to the Now Show on Radio 4.
But fortunately,
6:30 on a Friday night.
You can get that as a podcast, so you don't need to listen to it like this. Anyway, let's get a verdict then. Let's find out whether people are going to forgive Hugh or not. Joe Wiley.
Oh, Fred wants to speak.
Well, I was just going to say I absolutely forgive you because, and I'd like to echo the thoughts and feelings of everybody in BBC management who, when you said it was 1974 and it was a different era, really had a bit of a seizure. So you could have said anything after that about your clothing and you would have been totally forgiven. Okay?
Joe?
Yeah, obviously forgiven just for the shove halfpenny board because nobody would have wanted that and the disappointment. So, it's completely forgiven.
Bobby Pryor.
Oh, I feel for you. I wanted Buckaroo and I never got anything. And I just wanted Buckaroo so badly. I feel for you. And I actually once did wear my shoes out by riding my bike and dragging my feet along the floor. So I feel your pain. I forgive you too.
But as far as our audience are concerned, do you forgive Hugh? If you do, you cheer, and if you don't, you boo, and you do it now.
He is absolved.
See, they're not going to inflict that on their children, these people.
Consider yourself forgiven. Hugh, thank you very much indeed. Let's
Thank
play
you.
some Tom O'Dell.
Thank
It's
you very
8 minutes to 5.
The Confessions Podcast.
Okay, now it's confession time. Would you welcome to the stage here is Angela Barnes. Give her a round of applause, please. Won the BBC Radio Comedy Award in 2012. Sellout Fringe shows. She is doing the show Rose Tinted at the Pleasance Courtyard Beside. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
7:15 on until Sunday. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Been here forever, but I'm good.
It's very nice to see you. So the music is running. We can hear it. So
Right.
The stage is yours, Angela. What do you have to confess to us tonight?
Okay, well, Father Simon and the righteous rabble, I am asking for forgiveness from you quite literally, because I don't know if this is a first on Confessions, but Simon and Joe were actually both present at the event that I'm asking forgiveness for.
Ooh.
So, I am a stand-up comedian who came to comedy in 2010, a bit later in life at the age of 33. I've always been a late developer. I learnt to swim at 37, to drive at 39, and next year I thought I'd join the Brownies. See how that goes. In 2011, I won the BBC New Comedy Award, and I'd only been gigging for just over a year, so it was a bit of a shock, and suddenly the next 12 months were filled with exciting new things. I was interviewed by Terry Wogan. I was on Steve Wright in the afternoon, and in September 2012, I was asked to perform an 8-minute comedy set at Radio 2's Live in Hyde Park, a festival in a day.
I remember.
Oh, I'm not surprised you remember. You see, the 2012 BBC New Comedy Award was being launched, and so the powers that be at the BBC thought it'd be fun for me to come and do a set at Live in Hyde Park, help them to launch it, because I'd won the year previously. And when I tell this tale, I'd really appreciate it if you can remember that I have won a comedy award. Now, it was a real honour to be asked. Of course, Hyde Park has been the home of some great spectacles. After all, Rolling Stones, Live 8, the Tweenies. And on this day, I was incredibly nervous. So a car picked me up from home and I got taken to the gates of Hyde Park. Then a golf buggy took me to the backstage area and people kept running up to look to see who was in there. And I've never disappointed so many people in one afternoon. I felt like Tim Henman. Wrong crowd. When I arrived, I was greeted by the producer of the show, who informed me that the presenters were Simon Mayo and Joe Wiley, and that I would be going on stage sometime in the afternoon. Now, the lineup for the day included Mick Hucknall, Emily Sandé, Rebecca Ferguson, Paloma Faith, Status Quo, and the two headliners, Jessie J and Tom Jones. The producer then told me, and I really wish he hadn't, that there was an audience of 35,000 people at the show. That is 202s. That is the population of Billericay. And it was being broadcast live on Radio 2 and streamed live on the BBC website as well. Now, I was used to gigging in rooms above pubs with 4 men and a bewildered dog, so it was a bit much. I was supposed to be going on stage at some time in the afternoon to do 8 minutes of stand-up comedy to 35,000 people who were there for pop music. Not ideal. But I still thought at this stage that it might be fun. Oh, how wrong I was. To cut a long story short, I kept getting bumped up the lineup and I eventually ended up having to go on stage after Jessie J and before Tom Jones. Jessie J and her bandmates came off stage high-fiving each other, and Jeremy Vine, who was stood next to me in the wings, put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Crikey, good luck." Then Simon Mayo went out onto stage and he said to the crowd, "Are you excited about Tom Jones?" And they went wild. And then he said, "But first," and introduced me to the stage. I came out, I said, "Hello, Hyde Park," and they cheered. And that is a moment I will never forget, as it went rapidly downhill when they realised I was not Tom Jones and that I was not in Tom Jones's band. I don't know if you've ever stood between 35,000 Tom Jones fans and their hero, but they don't like it. A wave of disappointment and frustration from 35,000 people is tangible. You can taste it. And when they realised I was going to be there for a little while, they took the opportunity to go to the loo or get drinks from the bar and generally ignore me until I went away. I started to do my set, and just to be really helpful, members of Tom Jones's band started tuning up behind me. I ploughed through the jokes on autopilot while in my head I tried to think of nice thoughts and my happy place, which was anywhere but there. It's safe to say, ladies and gentlemen, I bombed. I knew it had gone really badly because when I got back to my dressing room afterwards, I had a text message from my brother who'd been watching the live stream that simply said, "Oh, well, at least your dress was nicer than Jessie J's." Which is still to this day the nicest thing he's ever said to me. Now, I don't ask forgiveness from Radio 2, as I think they should have realised maybe that sending an unknown comedian out before Tom Jones was sending a lamb to the slaughter. It would have been a difficult job if Michael McIntyre had to go out there at that point, let alone some woman they'd never heard of. I don't ask forgiveness for the audience, from the audience, because it was delaying their gratification, sure, but at least it gave them a chance to top up their drinks or go to the loo before Tom came on. And boy, did they take advantage of that opportunity in their droves. But I do ask forgiveness from one Simon Mayo. I was supposed to be on stage for 8 minutes, but after 5 minutes, the chance of "We Want Tom" had become too much to bear. And I cut my losses, said my goodbyes, and bailed. This meant that Simon, who'd probably been enjoying a nice cup of tea and a break, had to abandon what he was doing to race back to the stage to make sure the live broadcast continued. And for that, Simon, I truly seek your forgiveness.
Oh, wow. OK, well, Angela Barnes. No one's asked for my forgiveness, but you have it, of course. And I do remember that. I do remember that moment. And maybe I'm part of the problem, having said, "But first."
But I do remember this. Do you not? I was going, what? Who is she?
Yeah.
What's she doing this? Oh.
Yeah, it was a terrible mistake. And because I was so new, it never occurred to me to say, "No, I'm not going to do that." So I did it.
I know, that's what you do. You do as you're asked, don't you? Do as you're told.
But it did make up the 10 minutes of my first Edinburgh show, the last 10 minutes. So,
there you go.
So, I got that out.
All right, well, we'll ask the audience in just a moment. But, Joe, are you feeling...
Oh, how could you ever, I feel like we should ask your forgiveness, to be honest with you. I do remember, and, I've completely forgiven.
Bobby Pryor.
Yeah, it's easy. It's absolutely gorgeous of you to go and get on that stage. I mean, fabulous for just getting on and doing it and actually making sense and going, actually, I'm going to cut this short. I can do that, because that's a good call too. I think you just made good calls all the way around. You are forgiven.
Let's get a snap poll from our highly individually selected, very good-looking audience. If you forgive Angela, say yay, and if you don't, then boo, and do it at the same time now.
Oh, there's the cheer you were after. There's the cheer.
Where
There's
were
the love.
you in September 2012?
Angela Barnes, give her a bigger round of applause.
The Confessions Podcast.
Well, they were this week's confessions. Memorable, every single one of them, didn't you think? Yeah. Have you enjoyed being a part of this podcast? Has it really raised your appreciation of BBC production standards? All right. Thank you very much indeed for downloading this latest podcast.
I guess it's all back to normal on Tuesday.
That sounds... Say that again. Lovely stuff. I like it. Listen, thank you so much for coming. A round of applause, please, for all our producers, all our backstage craft, all the guys at the back there. Thank you very much. And thanks to you for coming. We'd have been rubbish without you. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Bobby Pryor.
See you
See you
next
again
year.
soon. Thank you. Goodbye.
The Confessions Podcast. Go in peace.